Hello, and welcome to Wallace's Mysteries of Antiquity. Subscribe to this series to join me in exploring the enigmas of our distant ancestors and try to come to tentative conclusions about them. The Red Pyramid is often forgotten about in the shadow of the Giza wonders or the unique bent one next to it, but it was the first true pyramid. It's also in a remarkable state of preservation and remained largely unexplored for a very long time. This is primarily due to it being located within a military base until 1991. Howard Weiss and John Shea Perring did document it and drew this diagram in 1837. In this drawing, you can see the level of debris that filled the pyramid, and there is actually a pit right at the entrance that was not yet known about. Flinders Petrie added some more precise measurements of the outer sanctum, but was prevented from exploring the rest of the pyramid by, well, just to give you an idea of how Indiana Jones-esque early Egyptology was, here's how he described it. Quote, "Some animal has a lair in the inner chamber. I did not disturb it, being unarmed and miles from any help. And a pair of hyenas with a family might have proved awkward acquaintances." End quote. It was only until very recently we've even had decent measurements of the structure, which added to the mystery. I delved into this pyramid's mismatched tip in another video. In this one, I'm taking you inside. First, though, let's look around the pyramid. If you visit, you will see several piles of casing stones laying around. These had fallen off the pyramid and now lay scattered in piles. There is a small section of casing stones that are still in place. It was in front of the mud brick temple that now contains the pyramidion. These are polished Toro limestone blocks. Its entrance is the highest of any pyramid at 27 meters. It is 2 courses tall and straddled by a huge lintel that leads to a 62-meter-long downward passage. The downward passage ends with a curious pit. This is how it appears now, with the plank over it. It is rough and about a meter deep. It's unclear if this is an original feature or perhaps an early robber's exploration. It may have been to catch debris and rainwater so that it didn't enter the chamber. Entering the first chamber, the final straight passage exits under an absolutely massive stone. This appears to be near the base of the pyramid, though there is still some masonry below the floor. There is currently a modern wood floor in this space, but here you can see the original floor in this old picture. Here, we start to see hints that maybe this pyramid isn't what it first seems. Look at how impressive this huge stone is. Let me back way up and tell you about Pharaoh Snefru. He was said to have built the Meidum Pyramid, although part of that may have already existed. Then he built the Bent Pyramid, and then the red one. If these are tombs, why did he need 3? The Meidum Pyramid might not have really been Snefru's project. His name was definitely on it. He may have completed it, but it either wasn't a tomb, or at very least was never meant to be his tomb. Either way, very quickly, it was known that it was not structurally sound, and was likely never considered good enough. The Bent Pyramid is complete. It has a burial chamber, antechamber, temple, walls, all of it. It's a pyramid built to entomb a king and ferry him to the afterlife, and seems to be the one he actually used. So what does this leave the Red Pyramid, which he was also building? Keep all of this in mind as we go forward. I mentioned that here we start to see that maybe this wasn't a tomb. Look at the majesty of this stone. This is probably one of the most impressive sites in Egypt. Was it really meant to be sealed up, or could it have been designed to be marveled at? Strangely, this giant block appears to have a line going up it. The left side is actually smoothed more than the right side. This is very mysterious, and I have no idea why. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. You can see chisel marks on this giant lintel as well. They're the ones that are going horizontal. The other scratch marks are modern graffiti. Here we see another case of the master masons flexing. There is no structural reason to cut a corner like this. It's purely a show of craftsmanship. Again, this seems to be something you'd want to show off. Here we see one of the most iconic features of the Red Pyramid, the corbelled ceilings. All 3 chambers in this pyramid have high corbelled ceilings to relieve weight, and unlike the damaged ones in the bent and great pyramids, these have sharp edges and are almost perfectly preserved. Here is another feature unique to this pyramid. Every corbel has dark stains at the top and bottom, but not the side facing down. I've seen a lot of speculation on this staining, and I've even seen people sniff and taste it, reporting that it tastes like chemicals, mainly ammonia. Bats hang from this corbel and pee on the side of it. The pee stains the top, then drips down to the bottom where it also leaves a stain, leaving nothing on the underside. Don't lick the pyramids. Every diagram I've seen of the Red Pyramid has holes in these ceilings. I see no such holes or evidence of mortar. I believe that Howard Weiss and John Paring believed they saw holes in their dim lantern light, and everyone has copied their diagrams since. If you know of these holes, please point them out. Leaving the first chamber, the second chamber is mostly a carbon copy of the first. If you enter this chamber now, you'll see the staircase shown in the right image. The left image shows what this wall looked like before the tourist access was built. You can see how high up the secret tunnel to the next chamber is. Going up the staircase, you can get a beautiful view of the corbel ceiling. This is from the 7-meter shaft that leads to the final room. Before we do, though, let's take a look at these small holes. It's most likely that these were used to insert logs to maneuver large items and possibly the covering stone into its final location. Perhaps they were filled, but I see no evidence for that. Strange considering that they went through the trouble of hiding the chamber up high, but didn't hide the log holes. Perhaps they believed they would not be visible in the dark. The tunnel to the upper section was a single course high, but it seems the looters have dug out the floor in order to make it taller. This is likely not to get grave goods out, as you'd still have to get them out the descending passage, which was about the same height. So this is probably related to the main mystery of the upper section. Now we enter the upper chamber and are smacked right in the face with this pyramid's biggest mystery. What on earth happened here? This isn't just a floor being dug up. Without context, it's difficult to show how huge this hole really is. It's 14 feet deep. Here's a man standing within it. Many independent researchers have noted the apparent weathering on the stones beneath the floor. It looks like they have been eroded by ages of sitting outside. Many theorize this pyramid may have actually been built on top of an older monument. Look at the contrast compared to where a stone has fallen out, and we can see a clean, square hole. It's been suggested that perhaps the material from the floor was used to make a ramp to get grave goods out. The amount of materials would roughly match up to the material needed for such a ramp, but history for granite points out that then there's no place to store the stuff while you're working. And also, why not simply dig out the tunnel and use that as part of the ramp? So many questions. In times like these, it's useful to put ourselves into the shoes of these first looters. Say you and a small team personally just removed the blocking stone and revealed the upper section. Because you took it out, you are certain that you are the first ones inside, and that the priceless treasures inside are yours. You squeeze into the next chamber, and it's empty. Well, maybe not completely. Maybe there's a sunken sarcophagus and a handful of items, but the pharaoh and his grave goods are nowhere to be seen. You know the Egyptians had a habit of hiding things under the floor, so you begin taking it up. Under the floor, there's just more masonry. It does make sense to continue to dig down. You're not at bedrock, and you went up to get to this chamber. The most likely place is beneath it. So we're gonna need to really start digging. To understand how the ancient looters may have dug this hole, you need to understand how they would quarry. You were probably taught in school that they dug small holes, inserted wooden wedges, and then soaked them. The expanding wood broke the stone. While they did do this, there was another way, used more frequently while digging out giant obelisks. They were cut down in place, and expanding wood would not be useful in this circumstance, so the stone had to be cut. You might imagine men sitting there with chisels and hammers, but the most likely way they did this was by lighting a fire where they wanted to cut. Then, once baked and brittle, they'd smash it with large hammers. With this approach, workers could cut several inches per hour, much faster than unbaked stone. That's likely how they weakened stones to break them here. A fire was lit in the middle of the room and the stones were repeatedly smashed. This answers history for granite's question as to why they didn't dig out the tunnel. It would be unwise to light a fire directly under a lintel, as it may break and cave in the whole entranceway. That part had to be carved out the hard way, so they did the bare minimum to get what they needed out. That's also why the stones look so weathered. That soot and carbon dioxide eventually turned into carbonic acid, which ate away at the limestone. That's why some of it looks melted while other parts look shattered. These ancient looters probably left frustrated and definitely without the grave goods they were sure they'd find. So what happened? What is this place? I have heard one good idea from Ancient Sites Girl. Before Snefru, many old kings had two mastabas, one in Abydos and the other at Saqqara. This was to project his power over both northern and southern Egypt. Snefru was a powerful ruler, and perhaps no longer felt that he needed to have a tomb in both north and south to project power. His power was no longer in question. Perhaps he simply built one complex with two tombs, one to serve as his actual resting place and the other as ceremonial and for worship. That's why the impressive masonry and giant lintel is presented. It's meant to be seen. The upper chamber never held a body. All they found were ceremonial items that you would have found in the southern mastaba for kings of old Egypt. I think that's the secret of what happened to the upper section. But what if I told you there might still be one more secret that the ancient looters might have actually screwed themselves out of? When first entering the chamber, instead of looking down, maybe they should have looked at the walls. There is an inconspicuous black stone in the middle of a wall underneath a lintel, making it not load-bearing. This may not have been noticed until modern lights were introduced to the pyramid, so even the old explorers with the dynamite never thought to try and pull the stone out. I don't see any reference to this stone before Ancient Architects' video on it, so I've casually adopted the name for it of Simpson's stone. How did the looters not even consider probing this stone? I think they shot themselves in the foot by lighting a fire. The smoke from their fire caked the walls black and obscured the color difference, and it was not noticed until the modern day. Scan Pyramids is currently running experiments in the Red Pyramid, and I suspect they may find an additional chamber right behind this stone. My opinion is they might find a ceremonial burial chamber and that the known upper section is a ceremonial antechamber, which is why the first looters found it mostly empty. Whereas the two chambers below are intended to be used by those bringing offerings, and the giant lintel and fine masonry would be reminders of the grandeur of Snefru. I think this was its true purpose. Thank you for listening. Respectfully discuss Snefru's mysterious Red Pyramid in the comments, and subscribe if you wish to continue to explore the mysteries of our distant ancestors together.